Welcome to Get On With It, Inspiration for Life and Leadership. I'm your host, Sue MacArthur, President of Strategic Talent Management. We've all met them, the people who have a presence and a unique point of view that make us want to lean in and say, tell me more. In this podcast, we celebrate these people and provide a platform through which they can share their insights. Whether you lead a company, a community organization, or just your own life, we offer you these moments of clarity, hope, and inspiration. So let's get on with it. Welcome, listeners. Life is chaotic by default, but what do great leaders do to rise above the noise? On this episode, I'm very pleased to have an opportunity to talk with Karl Sakas, agency advisor at Sakas and Company. Karl helps marketing and advertising agency owners work less and earn more. Fabulous. We all love that. And he's worked with over 600 agencies in 36 countries. He's written hundreds of articles and 4 books on agency growth, including his latest, Calm the Chaos: 10 Ways to Run a Better Agency. Although written for agencies, I'm sure there are lessons here for any leader in any industry. So here to talk about how to calm the chaos and lead when everything feels like it's on fire is Karl Sakas. Welcome, Karl.
Great to be here and looking forward to helping people.
Wonderful. Well, I've read your book, and as I said, although agencies are your specialty, there's a lot in there that could apply to almost any leader of any smaller business. But let's start with agencies. Why is agency life so chaotic by default?
Agencies as a services business are by definition very human oriented. You've got humans as clients, humans as team members, and people are complicated. So there's that complexity there. The other thing, though, is that when it comes to marketing and creative and technical work that agencies are doing, there's often fuzziness around what success looks like. For instance, a chief marketing officer could hire a plumber to come to their house and deal with a problem. And it's pretty clear if they did the job or not. Say they've installed a new water heater, or they fixed the leak, or things like that. Like done is pretty clear. In contrast, that same chief marketing officer could hire an agency in their work, and now things get a little unclear. Like, is the work good? Is it done well? Is it done in the first place? So
Right.
agencies do tough work. But as you noted, the advice in the book in Calm the Chaos does apply to just about any leadership or management role.
Right. What inspired you to write this book? Was there a particular moment that pushed you into turning this into a book?
You know, in my work, advice around leadership and management is a key thread throughout. If you're running a small business, you are going to be a manager and a leader. When I wrote the previous book, Work Less, Earn More: How to Escape the Daily Grind of Agency Ownership, there was a lot in there about leadership, but I wanted to dig deeper. I wanted to expand on that advice, and that's how Calm the Chaos came together. The title came from a conversation I had with a coaching client several years ago, where at the beginning of the call, she'd been really stressed, right? There was a lot going on, things with the team, things with clients, things beyond that. And so we reviewed where things were. We talked through what she was facing. I provided some perspective about how her situation matched up to other agencies while validating what she was going through. And by the end, we had a sense of where to go from there. And I asked how she was doing, and she said that I had helped her through the call calm the chaos. And that made my day. So that became the title of the book, Calm the Chaos. And of course, chaos is relative for anyone listening. If it feels like chaos, it is chaos. Though usually
Right.
it's multiple things hitting at once.
Mm-hmm. And that may feel differently to different people. And
Yeah,
the chaos level varies.
exactly. Some of its personality, some of its experience. I remember I was concerned about a printing run of something like 200 booklets a number of years ago. And my colleague Diane had some perspective on it because earlier in her career, she was doing printings of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of copies of things.
Mm.
So that wasn't to say that, getting things right with the 200 copies, that still was a legitimate concern, but it also wasn't hundreds of thousands of copies. So that it helped to get that perspective.
Yes, and sometimes perspective is all we need,
Yes.
right? You've coached a lot of business leaders. What's one of the most surprising patterns you've seen across businesses of different sizes and specialties?
One of the big patterns is people struggling to let go of the day-to-day work. Now, the
Mhm.
day-to-day is going to vary by business, but for instance, for agencies, it's generally doing client billable work with the client. For other businesses, it could be something else, but usually it's sort of the hands-on type work rather than management, leadership, running the business smoothly, looking ahead into the future. It's more about the what in the moment needs to happen for your clients or for your customers.
Mhm.
So people often struggle to let go. Sometimes they don't want to let go. Other times they feel they can't because they don't have someone on the team who could handle it. The exact solution will vary, but people often struggle with letting go of the day-to-day work to move on to the higher level activities.
Mhm. Sometimes the best thing a leader can do for a variety of reasons is to take things off of their own plate, to
Yes.
let go, to give up that those activities and give others an opportunity to step up. That
Yes.
can be really hard to do, particularly for those of us like myself with control issues. In chapter 6 of the book, you offer up 15 steps for good delegation. What are
Yes.
some of the highlights for making delegation your friend?
So you've caught an important thing from the book around it's easy to say, just delegate, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's easy to say, but it's hard to do because there are actually 15 steps if you want to delegate something. And
Mm-hmm.
just to summarize, it starts by recognizing, should you even delegate? Something,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like signing contracts, you'll probably hold on to that for a while. Things like that. Hiring people who report directly to you, you should hang on to that. But it starts just by recognizing, like, should we delegate this? But you're also thinking ahead to, well, what does success look like? Before you
Mm-hmm.
can delegate it to someone else, you need to know what done and what good looks like. You also need to think ahead to once you've delegated it and it comes back to you, how will you reintegrate what they've done? For instance, you delegate a task to someone, you're still going to need to spend some time reviewing what they've done and fitting it into whatever it is you're working on. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't have someone on your team to do the work already, you'll have to go off and hire them. Obviously, if it's a full-time employee, that's going to be more complicated than hiring, say, a part-time freelancer, but that adds even more steps to the process. And then later on, you're going to review the work they've done, you're going to integrate it, and there could be some follow-up steps from there. But all in, that adds up to 15 steps or more if you need to hire someone. So just saying, just delegate, it's more complicated than it seems. The good news is that as you repeat things or as you have team members that you grow to trust, you don't have to cover all 15 steps explicitly every time. For instance, my colleague Diane has been on board since 2018. We also had volunteered together for time before that. So now I'm able to make requests that are clear to her with less detail than having to describe everything. That helps. But as I mentioned in the book, generally your team can't read your mind.
Right. But hopefully we get to a point where the expectations can safely be assumed.
Exactly. Yes.
But I am fond of saying people can't meet your expectations if you don't tell them what they are. So that's got to
Exactly.
be part of this process,
Yes.
right? You talk in the book about moving from a doer or the answer person to being an actual leader.
Yes.
How do you define that, and what does that shift look like in reality?
So for agencies in particular, and this will vary by the type of business, but the doer is primarily doing the subject matter expert work. That could be design, development, copywriting, analysis, things like that. That ultimately you likely could outsource to a freelancer and then eventually an employee or maybe another agency, depending on the work. That ideally is the first thing you delegate, then maybe project management, then account management, things like that. But as you're sorting through kind of what needs to happen, you want to start with things that others could do as opposed to the things that only you could do. Uh,
Mm.
and I'm curious, what have you seen in your work around that?
Well, I think that the clients that we work with have all great intentions,
Yes.
and they may be successful at letting go and stepping into the leadership role and paying more attention to the big picture and the strategy and business development, which are the things that they should be doing. But
Yeah.
it's very easy for them to slip back into being the doer. And
Yeah.
that sabotages their ability to be the visionary and to grow the company because they get so bogged down in the day
Yes.
to day. And sometimes it's because they don't have anyone who can do it.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's because they don't have anyone they can trust to do it.
Right.
Um, Sometimes it's that training someone to do it takes a lot of time. It takes longer than to just do it yourself. So we
Yeah.
fall into that trap sometimes. But I'm fond of asking my clients, and I did not own this. I have to give credit to Eric Jensen at Predictive ROI for this. He once asked me to make a list of the things I was too expensive to do as president of the company.
I refer to that for agencies as your $1,000 an hour activities, things that you may not be billing clients $1,000 an hour to do, but what are the things that only you could do? And you know what? You could be doing things that are 10 or 20 or $100,000 an hour if it's a particularly high impact hour. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you're working through that. Going back to the original question around how do people go from being the doer or the answer person to a leader, we talked a bit about doer, about delegating to people who can handle some of those day-to-day activities. Being the answer person is a bit of a trap if you put yourself in that spot where you're no longer the primary doer, but you expect the doers on your team to keep coming to you for answers,
Mm-hmm.
right? You've trained them inadvertently to come to you to be like, is this done? Is this good enough? What should we do here? And the ideal solution is to give people what I would describe as your VGR, your values, your goals, and resources, so that they can make decisions without asking you all the time. Values around how should they be making decisions, like how should they approach things, goals around what you want them to accomplish, and resources around time, money, people, software,
Mm-hmm.
assets, and so on to get things done. The idea and ideal when things are running smoothly is that if your team knows the values, goals, and resources to follow, they can make 90 to 95% of their decisions and actions without consulting you first.
Mm-hmm.
They'll talk to you if there's something that's unclear that maybe the VGR didn't cover. And there are always going to be new situations that pop up. But ideally, as a good leader, you can say to your team, kind of build those guardrails. If you follow the appropriate VGR for our company and for our clients or customers, I will back you up on whatever decisions you make.
Mm-hmm.
I may ask you to do things differently in the future if I realize there were things that we hadn't clarified, but I'm not going to make you redo it if you followed the right values, goals, and resources.
Right. That's an easy thing to remember. Values, goals, and resources.
Yes.
Wonderful. Was there a chapter or a particular topic in the book that, as you spoke to people you work with who had read it, was there something in particular that really resonated with them and gave you some interesting case studies about how it impacted them in real life?
I mean, people for sure, things resonated around the don't be the sole doer or answer person. Tip number one about taking care of yourself in order to take care of others, about self-care. One, though, I think that really resonated was tip number 10 about meetings, which is that basically if you're the boss, you can now create better meetings for yourself and everyone around you. I think we've all been in a bad meeting or maybe 100 bad meetings over the years. I'm curious, are any particular meetings coming to mind from your experience? Any worst meeting?
Not in recent history, but I've been in other organizations where, because now I have a little more control over how our
Yeah.
meetings are
Yeah.
structured and so forth. But I have certainly been in some organizations, particularly in the public sector or in academia. Oh my goodness, the academics can't
Mm,
get enough meetings.
yeah. Yeah.
So it's been interesting.
You've probably seen the meme. I actually have the ribbon. I survived another meeting that should have been an email.
Mm-hmm.
They also make a red ribbon. I survived an email that should have been a meeting. So there really is
Wow.
something for everyone. But here's the thing. I'll have agency owners say, if I weren't in so many meetings, I could get my job done. The thing is, if you are a manager or a leader, meetings are part of your job now. So
Mhm.
sorry,
Like it or not.
like it or not, yeah, but that means that you can make meetings better for everyone.
Mhm.
So, one solution is to do a meeting audit. Look at your meetings over the past month, or you could look ahead to the meetings coming up in the next month and look at some things like, does this meeting need to happen? Could we cancel it? Could you, for instance, make the meeting asynchronous? If it's like an update meeting, that doesn't have to be a meeting. If it's brainstorming, then that probably makes sense. But one solution that I got from Edward Tufte, the information designer, is a concept he calls, and I talk about it, crediting him in Calm the Chaos, called study hall. I applied this with a marketing trade association where in the past we would have these pre-updates and then no one would read the pre-updates and then we'd go around the room and people would share their updates again and not always applicable to everyone. So my solution was, all right, let's do study hall. People put all of their updates into, rather than these separate PDFs, a centralized Google sheet stock with a tab for each month. Everyone could see what everyone else updated. That accomplished two things. One, people could see what else was going on the other teams rather than creating silos. And people could also see if people had made the updates in time, right? Things were due a day or two before the board meeting. People had to get things done and they could see if others hadn't done their job. Then, in
Mm-hmm.
the first 10, 15 minutes of the meeting, everyone would on their own read the updates. We then use the live meeting, and before that, we would have dinner brought in, and so people could be chatting, socializing. Then people would do the reading on their own. And then we would use the meeting for things that could only happen in a live meeting, things like brainstorming, troubleshooting, highlighting things that everyone needed to know, but that wasn't every single thing in every update. So that created better meetings for everyone, and we finished on time. So uh, you know, that's something. There could be some meetings you could eliminate or move to asynchronous or partly asynchronous. There also may be some things, if you're in a leadership or management role, where maybe you are leading the meeting now. Maybe you should become a meeting attendee. Maybe you have a team member who should become in charge of that meeting. And so you can mostly just show up for the meeting rather than having to do all the prep and having to lead things. That's an opportunity for you to reward your best team members. That's
Mm-hmm.
something I talk about in the previous Work Less, Earn More book. It's about helping agency owners, the business owners, work less and earn more, but also while rewarding their best team members. Your team wants to get promoted. They want new responsibilities. They want to get a raise. And by having them take on some of what you're doing as a leader and a manager, that creates opportunities for that. So switch some meetings to asynchronous. Stop being in charge of meetings if you don't have to be in charge. Maybe there's some where the meeting needs to happen, but you could get an update afterwards, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's through an AI note-taking tool or something else. The odds are you could eliminate 5 to 10 hours a week of meetings that you have now.
Mm-hmm.
Take a look at your calendar, do that meeting audit, maybe looking backwards and then looking forward so you can make changes for the future.
And if we made a change to our full team meeting every week, our account executive is now in charge of creating the agenda and facilitating us through that. She's
Yeah.
also a pretty good timekeeper. It freed us up. She's great at following up and saying, "Hey, you said in the meeting you were going to do this."
Yes.
So it's empowered her. She's much more an integral part of those meetings, and it definitely freed my business partner and I up to do some other things with our time.
Awesome. That sounds like a win-win-win.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about decision making.
Yes.
When you're feeling overwhelmed and like everything's on fire, like we said earlier in the podcast, it can be really difficult to make decisions. There may be a bunch of stuff coming at you, there may be a bunch of different options you have to sort through.
Yeah.
How do you approach decision making in those tough situations?
Consider a few things. One is the Eisenhower matrix. Is it important versus urgent? And kind of high or low urgency, importance, and so on. So if something is high importance and high urgency, I'm going to do that first. But if something is high urgency and low importance, that's going to be noisy. It's going to be loud, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's impactful. That could be a good thing to delegate. Or the flip side is something that is high importance but low urgency. Those are things where you need to especially make time, or else at some point they're going to turn into high urgency and high importance, but now you don't have the lead time or the runway to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, I have a monthly cadence of certain meetings that need attention: finances, marketing, product and service development, as well as particular projects. So, like for instance, as I was leading up to releasing the Calm the Chaos book, that became a monthly meeting because it was a big enough project that I wanted to make sure we had that ongoing cadence. So,
Mm-hmm.
if there are things in your team that tend to slip through the cracks, it may make sense to add it as an ongoing meeting. And of course, if you're like, I don't want to make that an ongoing meeting, that could be a sign that it's not important enough to merit that ongoing
Mm-hmm.
meeting. So that can be helpful. Some other things that I think about, if there's something that I can spend a relatively short amount of time on, but it unlocks my team taking action, that's a good ROI on time.
Mm-hmm.
It lets them be productive, it lets them move forward rather than waiting on me. The
Mm-hmm.
other category, in terms of preparedness, in terms of deciding what to do, is around whether something, say I'm preparing, is it likely to happen? If it's likely to happen, that's probably a good thing to invest time now to prepare for. The other category would be around things that are high risk. So maybe it's less likely to happen, but the impact would be catastrophic. For instance, I recently did a government 101 program to learn how local government works, and that included visiting the county emergency management office.
Mm-hmm.
They have a plan for everything, right? Tornadoes, hurricanes, everything. I learned I'm in Orange County, North Carolina, which is also the home of UNC Chapel Hill. Apparently, when UNC's basketball team is in the playoffs, the county actually has an emergency management plan for if the team wins, thousands of students descending on Franklin Street, the main street in
Mm-hmm.
Chapel Hill. And so they'll have like 150 or 200 first responder personnel ready. So if things get out of hand, they're mobilized, they're ready to go, and it's not having to like get through the crowd to help people.
Mm-hmm.
So, prepare for what is likely to happen and also prepare for things that may be less likely, but that would be catastrophic if they did.
Right. Right. What do you see that strong leaders do differently when things are on fire and really chaotic? What do the best leaders do to handle that?
Initially, they pause to sort out what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking of the firefighting analogy, I live in a small town in North Carolina, about 10,000 people. I got an update in the town newsletter inviting residents to attend a house fire. It turned out it was a practice fire. A house had been hit by lightning, and the owners it had been condemned, and the owners donated it to the fire department to burn down as a test,
Mm-hmm.
train people on what to do. So I showed up bright and early. They announced they'd prep at 8, the fire would start at 9, and things would be wrapped up by 4 p.m. Very, very scheduled. So, one of the things that stood out is they, of course, had set the fire in the house. It was quite a while, of things going before there was a lot of smoke and before things were, fully on fire. To me, one of the takeaways was that if you have working smoke detectors in your house, you're going to have enough time to get out, right? So, of course, check the batteries in your smoke detectors. One of the things here is that if you're dealing with chaos, you're dealing with a crisis, you likely can pause for a moment to assess what is going on. You don't immediately need to take action. For instance, you hear that you might be about to lose your biggest client. You don't need to immediately call them, right? Even in fact, if they're calling you and you've heard what's going on, you have the option to let it go to voicemail and take a few minutes to compose yourself before you call back. You might
Hmm.
need to talk to some of your team members to get some additional background information. Don't wait hours or days to deal with, a chaotic or crisis situation, but you can take a few minutes.
Hmm.
And also, if, say, you do answer the phone and a client is unhappy or something else is going on, it's okay to say, acknowledge the concern and all and say, let me get back to you. I need to look into this. I'll get back to you in and, give them a timeline. Is it 30 minutes? Is it an hour? If it's a bit smaller, maybe I'll get back to you tomorrow by tomorrow. People don't always need exact answers immediately, but they need to know that there's the promise of an answer coming soon.
Hmm.
So strong leaders pause amidst the chaos and act strategically rather than solely reactively. The other
Right.
thing that they do is they debrief afterwards. And the debrief is asking three simple yet powerful questions. What worked, what didn't work, and what will we do differently next time?
Hmm.
In fact, I just did a debrief with my team about writing the Calm the Chaos book. I took lessons learned from the first three books to write this as the fourth book, and we're already planning what will we do differently in the fifth book, and maybe have found a sixth book as well. So, it's not just taking action; it's debriefing on how things went, what worked, what didn't work, what will we do differently in the future, and then acting accordingly.
So I'm sure there's someone out there listening right now who feels like everything is on fire.
Yeah.
What is the first thing you would have them do to start regaining control?
I would go to tip number one from the book, which is to take care of yourself before you take care of others. That's about self-care. That's the put on your own oxygen mask first. And I know the idea of making time for self-care when you have no time, it feels impossible, but that's when you need it more than ever before. Maybe
Hmm.
taking a couple deep breaths. In the audio version of Calm the Chaos, which is a little bit under 2.5 hours, the print version's a little bit over 100 pages. I talk about taking a deep breath, and in the audio version, I actually guide the audience on take a deep breath in
Hmm.
and out. And you could choose to repeat that. It
Hmm.
can just help you just reset, so then you can sort out what do we do next.
Hmm.
It also may make sense to temporarily disable some of your alerts or alarms. On my phone, I've turned my phone off as we record this, but when it's on, I've disabled all audio alerts other than the alarm on the phone, which I'll set, if I need as a reminder, and the vibrating alerts for everything other than incoming calls so that, basically random apps popping up, email alerts, Slack, texts, so on. I'm not going to hear about it or kind of feel the vibration until I choose to look at the phone.
Hmm.
And I am looking at the phone throughout the day, but when I choose to, rather than because something has randomly buzzed or chimed.
Right. You're not being distracted in the middle of trying to tackle a bigger problem.
Exactly. Exactly. Because that buzzing or the chiming, it makes it very urgent, but it's not necessarily important.
Hmm. Right. If one of our listeners remembers only one thing from this conversation, what do you hope that is?
Hmm. I would say if there was a particular tip that resonated, it was like, oh, I really needed to hear that. I would encourage you to apply that tip in the coming week.
Hmm.
If there are other things where you're like, oh, I mean, there are a bunch of things I could do, well, maybe take some time to triage them, right? Maybe re-listen to the episode, or maybe you've taken some notes. What's the thing that'll make the biggest impact right now? And then I would apply that in the coming week. And
Okay.
if you're not sure, of course, you could get the book available on Amazon or at calmthechaos.xyz. But yeah, odds are if something stood out, like pay attention to that, take action on that, try it in the next week.
Right. Try it. Yes. I don't know how many times I've been at conferences and I've taken a bunch of notes and I think, oh, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
And then that notebook sits in the drawer and I see it again when I'm preparing for that conference the following year and say, oh, never did anything with that. So I would encourage our listeners to think about what makes sense to you, what's applicable to what's going on in your particular chaotic fire right now, and take some action.
Yes.
So, well, Karl, I so much appreciate you being here. Congratulations on the new book.
Thank you.
Interested to see what you come up with next time. And I appreciate your time. And to my listeners, I hope you have found this to be a valuable use of your time. Okay, Chris, this is the outro for the episode with Karl Sakas. Karl has provided some free resources on his website, and we will put the link to those in the show notes. Although he created them for marketing agencies, I assure you that regardless of what kind of organization you're leading, you will find something of value here. I personally found his piece about handling difficult client conversations to be particularly helpful. If you visit calmthechaos.xyz, you can read a free chapter of Karl's book, find other resources, and connect with him directly. That link will be in the show notes as well. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.